Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome to the stage Heather Wilde, the CTO and entrepreneur, mentor, and a finder of unicorns. She finds your inner unicorn. We've got Mark Masterson's not here today, he's ill, so I apologise for that. We've got Wempy, Dycota, Koto, is that right? Is that a good pronunciation, Wempy? And Diane, Perlman. And they're going to teach you about pitching and how to pitch correctly and how to win pitches. I'll leave you to it. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us in Manchester.
Thank you so much.
Hiya, Manchester.
Hey, Manchester.
Hi.
Very cool.
So, we're going to talk to you today about pitching and how to make an awesome pitch. And as you can tell, I am an American, so we have some interesting ideas about pitches, and I'm curious to know, is it a little different on this side of the pond? Wempy, tell me what you believe is a great pitch.
Yeah, firstly, I think it's important that you bridge the difference between a pitch that is interesting or a startup that is interesting versus a pitch or a startup that is investable. Now, there's a huge gap between interesting and investable. Interesting is quirky, fun, cool, you know, could be good, but investable is solid, will disrupt industry, will disrupt and change the world, and will potentially turn that investor into a multimillionaire or billionaire, if they're not already that. So that's, I guess, the first tip that I wanted to provide, is to ensure that you bridge the gap between what is interesting to what is investable.
And how about you, Diane?
It's a good question. I think so you've kind of taken it more from a macro view. I'll talk a little bit more kind of specific around technique. I mean, when I listen to pitches, I'm looking at the whole package. You know, start strong with your pitch, and then I really want to understand, you know, the things I need to know to really evaluate whether you are an investable company, whether you are a company that I believe in. But ultimately, when an investor's buying a company, you know, buying into a company, or when an accelerator, so the area I represent, is buying into a company, it's really about buying into that individual. So, you know, you have to be believable. You have to believe in you. So for me, a good pitch starts with the individual and that they are, you know, that they are believable.
Yep. And I think if I can just build on your point there, Diane, just when Diane mentioned the start of the pitch, I believe that it's vital to not come up on stage and say, "Hi, my name's X and X, and you know, I'm building." What you really need to start off with when you're pitching on stage for a competition or to an investor is start off with an extraordinary statement. And an extraordinary statement is a statement that is born out of insight, not information. Information is absolutely cheap. Information is Googleable, and information is all around us for free. But insight is something very deep, something that you cannot be Googled, something that has been something that arises from the sensing process, that you have researched the universe and come to a particular conclusion. If I can just give you a bit of my take on what is the sensing process. So the sensing process is like what a doctor does, and this is what entrepreneurs don't do a lot of. Often we build companies or we build startups out of our own egos, right? We have an idea that pops into our head while we go for a run, and then after that we kind of have a chat to our friend or somebody that we trust, and we might even ask them if they want to be a part of that startup, and then after that our ego starts to build what that startup is. Now, we can learn from what doctors and medical practitioners do, and that is the sensing process. And that sensing process is actually using your 5 senses from, you know, the sense of seeing, feeling, touching, smelling, all that sort of stuff that they do, that when you come into a doctor's office, they would ask you, okay, so what day did you actually start to feel sick? And then they would touch you and feel you and sort of say, okay, well, you're 42 degrees Celsius. Or then they would, you know, look deep into your eyes and see, you know, is it colored, etc. So doctors do a great process of sensing, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. We don't go out there and survey a lot. We don't talk to people a lot before we build our startups. So when you start to pitch, I believe that it's absolutely vitally important that you have communicated an insight that is born out of your sensing process.
That's actually a wonderful point. how the pitch actually doesn't start when you start talking. Like, you start pitching the second you walk into the room. Like, you have to start sensing what is going on with the person that's there. Are they on the phone talking to their wife because their child is in a bad mood? Are they on their computer doing something, trying to get that spreadsheet done? Are they in a mood that is not receptive to the pitch that you're trying to give? If so, you have to get them in the mood to hear your pitch. And how do you overcome that? Do you have any tips on that, Diane?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's I think is interesting there as well is around body language, because I can never remember the figures, but the majority of what people experience when you pitch is actually through your body language. Only about, I think, 5 to 7% is actually the content, what you say. So if you were standing up there, I mean, I can't tell you how many startups will, stand on stage like this and pitch, or hands on hips, or some pose that makes them look a bit cocky or a bit bored, or this was one of my favorites, they cut hand in the pocket, things like that. I know a lot of startups that do that. So how you stand, and when we coach pitching, it's all about coming onto the stage and planting yourself and then speaking to the audience, so maintaining that stance. So all of that is really important. And I think how do you get judges' attention? Command it by the way you come in with your stance, the way you carry yourself, the way you own the stage and own the room. So that would be my big tip.
Yeah, and just building on that is that everybody has a power position. You've got to know and identify your power position. You can't identify your power position on your own. You've got to stand up there and allow other people to assess what is your power position, whether it is with your hand grasped like that, or whether it is your hand somewhere. But then thereafter, it is also absolutely essential, just building on your position, your statement about body language, is just eye contact is absolutely vital. Yeah. You're not talking to a ceiling, you're not talking to the floor, but you're talking to people. And the greatest way to ensure that your message is being communicated is through eye contact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll add another thing. I mean, it depends on whether you're pitching to a large audience on stage at an event like this, or whether it's a small investor pitch. But know your audience. If you're pitching to a group of investors or a group of people out, for example, even on those pitch stages, know who they are. Tailor your pitch. If they've just invested in a company like yours, or they've just passed one up, or whatever, make sure you call that out so they know you've done your homework. That will also get them to take notice.
One of the worst things that I've seen is when people give the same pitch over and over, and that they've rehearsed it, and they can't change the words. And then the easiest way to test for that is when you interrupt them in the middle of it, and they're like, hold on a second, and then they have to go back. So when I'm coaching people on how to pitch, I always interrupt them in the middle of it to make sure that they're organic, that they're working on that. Do you guys encounter that often, Wempy?
Yeah, I think it's important that when you speak, that it's natural, that it's quite organic. Anybody, any investor, any audience can really pick up if a script is rehearsed. And when it's rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, it just comes out completely unnatural, inauthentic, and just completely, it's like some sort of pantomime or so on stage. Now, what you do want to ensure is that you come off as natural as possible, that you're genuine, and that you actually communicate. When you're passionate about a topic, you don't really need a lot of fancy slides. You don't need a lot of, hoo-ha. You just simply really need to communicate a very clear, simple, and concise points or points of information.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that, but equally, I mean, I think preparation is huge, because I know a lot of startup founders who they're very glib, they're super confident, and they think they can just go on stage or go in front of those investors and just pitch whatever comes into their heads. And preparation is hugely important. The trick is to be prepared and be rehearsed, but not sound like it, not sound bored because you've been giving that same pitch to every investor every day or what have you. So I think that's the real art and being able to be natural. And I also think that a lot of times startups are over reliant on their slides, and they load up slides with lots and lots of words. That's fine if you're going to be emailing your investor deck, but if you're pitching, it should be as few words as possible, because if people are spending time reading the slides up on the screen, they're not watching you, they're not listening to what you're saying, they're not engaging with you. And I think also what happens is that when there's too many words on the slide, I've seen startups, they turn to the slide, the slide that describes who they are, and they turn to the slide and they read their company description from the slide. Surely the founder knows what they do. But I think, while you don't want to sound rehearsed, having that practice, because every time you give that pitch, you're honing it, you're refining, you're understanding what people respond to, what's the combination of words that works. And when you land on those combination of words, you need to keep using those and keep testing those. So I think preparation and rehearsal is important, but it has to be authentic.
Absolutely.
You have to keep it fresh.
And there's, do you mind if I just add on to that? Because that was a great point. So let me add on to Diane's points there. Is that I really believe there is an important aspect that all of the world's greatest entrepreneurs are great storytellers. It is ingrained, it is part of the entrepreneurial, all the great entrepreneurs of the world within their DNA. They're great storytellers. Your goal when you pitch is not just to storytell. It's not just like a particular story. It's not just a stream, right? But it is also, it's not just storytelling. It's not just story building, where you actually build upon that story and you hit a crescendo, but it's actually story selling. So not storytelling, not story building, but story selling. How do you, with all the peaks and troughs of your story, sell and close the deal by the end of that pitch?
So just to if we have one more thing that each of us has to say about pitching, for me, I like to say that the best part of a pitch is, or the best way to do a pitch is to sell somebody a dream, give them the dream, then take it away, and then tell them how to get it. So that's the way that I have every pitch that I do and every story that I tell. Yeah. How about you?
No, I think it's important also is that think of a pitch, think of an effective pitch as 20% of a TED Talk where you're selling your vision, your purpose, and why you want to change the world. But then 80% really needs to be sales, and you've got to close that deal. You've got to be that visionary, that dreamer, but you've also got to be the closer too.
Diane?
Great points. I would also add that when you pitch, you need to think and speak in sound bites. Because a lot of times when you are the founder and you're so passionate about what you've built, you want to tell everyone everything about it. And there's long sentences, it's too much information, and you need to keep it short and punchy so people and memorable, so people can remember that almost Twitter speak kind of punchiness of it, because that's, you want them to be walking away remembering key points. And if it's all long prose and long sentences, it's going to be very difficult to get that memorability factor.
And just to close on that also is that pitch that you're doing, not only do you have to story sell, but you've got to be on stage. And in as much as you drop your ego and you have to absolutely sell your team, you must absolutely say that, you are there and your team is even greater than you. So you got to close on that aspect. But importantly also is that there has to be a level of arrogance in your pitch too. You've got to be not so cocky, but you've got to be cocky enough to make investors feel like, what, I got to get on board with this guy or this girl. I got to invest in that person, because if I don't, I'm going to lose out on a huge deal. So there's nothing wrong with being slightly arrogant and slightly cocky also with your pitch.
And that is a great way to close. So thank you, Diane and Wempy. It has been a great talk.
Awesome, thank you. Can I just leave on just a bit of a short plug? I'm doing a speech tomorrow at midday on why Asia is going to become the world's super digital power.
And I'm speaking right before him. So.
And if I can give a short plug for Mass Challenge. If you don't know us, Mass Challenge is the most startup-friendly accelerator on the planet. Applications for the UK program open on May 19th. So please check us out, masschallenge.org.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. We're just going to clear the chairs, and then we've got Julian Borer and Scott Wilkinson, fresh from Voom 2016, joining us. Voom is Virgin Media's pitch battle, where you pitch in front of Richard Branson.